are at the beginning of another week, a very exciting week. How do you know that this week is going to be very exciting? We'll have the answer tomorrow. Okay? All right, now we are on seeking. For 2 months we were on asking. Now we are seeking, right? Now, for example, Siddharth Sejwal, when he goes to the pools every morning, what does he seek? He will have an answer. I will not give his answer, right? Okay. Now, the very first thing I want to share with you today is something that might puzzle you a little bit, and it is good that we are puzzled from time to time, because otherwise we have a disappointingly easy passage through life, which is no good at all. Okay? You know, it is not only the case that human beings have the very special experience of seeking something nobler, seeking something higher. But also, and I think this is extremely important, something that we almost always forget or we're unaware of. Also, we are being sought. I'm going to repeat. It is not only that we seek, but we are being sought. Okay? It's most important to realize this. Now, let's try and understand this. One of the happiest experiences in our life, as all of you will readily agree, is the awareness that one is cherished by someone else. Or I'm going to use a very domestic, down-to-earth word, the feeling that one is needed by somebody else. All right? Two things. One is, I need you. The other is, I am needed. You know, one of the deepest pains in life, and this afflicts those who sink into the vale of years, old people, is the feeling that they are no longer needed. And this is what is called the pain of redundancy. Right? It's a very painful thing. The pain of redundancy. On the other hand, the feeling that one is needed, which is the secret of being relevant, is a very happy state. Someone says, I need you. Either functionally or, say for example, someone says, you know, I need your help in working out this mathematical problem. But also it's a far greater experience, a greater excitement in being told that I need you existentially. My life is incomplete without you. Somebody is seeking you. You may not be aware of it. And it has all kinds of variations. For example, your parents are seeking you. That's why they sent to St. Stephen's College. Seeking you in the sense, seeking the best in you. They want to see you blossom and flourish. They want to see the full glory of your being. They intuit something very special in you and realize that unless and until you've given conducive academic contexts in which these dormant potentials are brought to light, their own dreams will not be fulfilled. Your parents are seeking you. Your friends are seeking you. Your teachers are seeking you. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about something different. Something is seeking you. Something higher is seeking you. To understand this, I have to introduce a very basic proposition. And that proposition is that every time a new life begins, every time a baby is born, life, capital L, is trying to express something new about itself. The idea that a child is born because a man and a woman come together is a very inadequate idea. I mean, at the factual level it is true, but that's not the whole of it. There's always something more to everything that we handle. All our assumptions about things are only partial. This is something I have explained elaborately to you at the very beginning. There is more to everything that we handle. So every time a new life comes into being, something new is sought to be expressed. And I believe that this is the secret of the uniqueness of every human being. No human being is like another. We are not carbon copies or clones of each other. We are so unique and so distinctive. 7 billion people will have 7 different fingerprints. I mean, isn't that mind-boggling? This little thing, it's different in the case of every human being. Something new is being expressed. And I'm going to now express it in somewhat philosophical terms and say that through each one of us, life is seeking something. What something is, what that something is, only you know, I don't. I know that life is seeking something through me, that I know. And this is what in conventional language is expressed as purpose in life. Now, of course, in an individualistic age, purpose can be understood reductively as my own individual goals. The goals that are, or the goal or goals that are limited to my own small little world. But if you have a slightly enlarged vision of things, and if you care to develop your intuitions, the intimations, that was a word the Romantics used, then you know that you're not just this isolated atom which is thrown into the world in a kind of casual, pell-mell fashion, but that you are a very purposive introduction into the scheme of things to fulfill certain purposes, to make certain impacts, to bring about certain changes in the whole system. You know, T.S. Eliot, the English poet and literary critic, wrote a fantastic piece called Tradition and the Individual Talent. His thesis is that each time a creative genius comes into the tradition itself is renewed and changed. Every person has an impact on the total whole. So in that sense, you are not only seeking the tradition is also seeking you. It's a two-way traffic, right? Now, some time ago I introduced Martin Heidegger, and at that time I told you that Heidegger's main thesis is that being, with a capital B, is continually seeking Dasein. That Zain means the being with a capital B. All of us are the expressions of the being with a capital B, and therefore the being is continually seeking the Zain. You understand? Something needs to be expressed. Something new needs to find expression. Now, you are given the freedom, and this is where the problem arises. Every human being is given the freedom to respond to this wonderful pattern or to walk out of it with his or her eyes closed. Every individual has the right, the freedom of choice, to shut his or her eyes willfully against this beautiful large pattern and to lead a very narrow, cloistered existence with limited scope and perhaps with no larger responsibilities. Now, please examine yourself in this light and ask yourself whether you are in a state of accountability or responsibility or responsiveness to St. Stephen's College, for example, to take a very small unit, leave alone the cosmos, leave alone, being with a capital B, leave alone life with a capital L. What is the extent of your seeking St. Stephen's College? And even more importantly, what is the extent of your awareness of St. Stephen's College seeking you? It's happening all the time. In my life as the head of this institution, this is the most powerful reality. This institution, perhaps unlike many others, is continually seeking every one of you. And that's the reason why we take things very seriously. An institution receives a young person into its heart and thereafter begins this pilgrimage after that person. For us, a student is not just a name on the roster, a number at the time of examination, but something very profound that the college needs to seek constantly all the time. That's how the institution will change. Therefore, the outcome of every genuine seeking, the fruit of seeking, is change. Anything that remains stagnant, petrified. Petrified means remaining like a stone. Petrus is Greek for stone. Petrified, rendered like a stone. Therefore, unchanging. Okay? Means that you are not seeking and you are not aware of being sought. All right? So I would very strongly recommend this to you. In fact, I would plead with you to spend time quietly and to develop this intuition of being sought by something great. Now, look at it. If an ordinary person says, look, I need you, you will feel very happy. Certainly it is much better than being told to your face, get lost, I don't want to see you again, I don't need you, right? Okay, what a world of difference it makes when somebody steps up to you and says, look, I need you, I cannot live without you. Of course, it's a very romantic statement, right? Remember, we have these great romantic stories of Laila, Majnu, the lovers risking his life, swimming dangerous waters in the dead of night in order to be united with the object of his love, and all of us sit and weep and all the rest of it. You don't understand that this is nothing but the beauty of seeking. That seeking contains a statement, the statement of your value, the value of the object of love. So seeking is always predicated on human worth. Now, to be needed by a fellow human being is a wonderful thing. But how much more wonderful and great is the reality that you are being sought by something transhuman, beyond the human, the being, or in the religious tradition, God. You know, and if you really look at religious traditions, spiritual traditions, you will actually find God seeking human beings. To me, that's the most moving experience. For me, the greatest thing in spirituality is not people seeking God, going to this place, that place, this place, that place, as though God is some kind of a piece of stone that sits somewhere. For me, the greatest thing in spirituality is the reality that God, the divine, by whichever name you know him or her, God seeks you. That's the greatest thing. And that seeking is the statement of your own worth, your own value. And it is because you're unaware of this that you try to create value or worth for yourself through all kinds of cheap methods. Either resorting to some trick somewhere, or doing some extraordinary thing like piercing your eyebrows and putting a ring there, or wearing some bohemian clothes, or whatever, various strategies, techniques, methods that we use in order to beg attention of others, all of us know. The moment you realize that you are being continually sought by something higher than any human being that you know, your perception will change. It's a very liberating experience, okay? So I would plead with you to accept this reality and to enter into it in your own fashion. That's the very first thing I wanted to say. I hope I have rendered myself clear. Is that clear? Does anyone want to ask me a question? Because what I've said to you today is, from my philosophy of life, my worldview, extremely important. My very strategy for life depends on this very deep conviction. Let me be a little autobiographical so that it becomes very clear. So the last 7 years of my tenure as the principal of this college, it is this awareness, this intuition that has led me. And various things have happened as a result of this awareness. If a person occupies a position out of personal, selfish, individualistic, or egocentric reasons, then it's a very different experience. In fact, I would have cracked into 100 pieces if I had entered into this great adventure with that kind of individualistic notion of being the head of an institution. I was very clear that there was a very special purpose in my coming back to the college. I was never in any doubt about it. And therefore, at the zenith of turmoil, I would experience true ecstasy. Because that becomes then the confirmation of the fact that you are on the right track. You know, from the world's point of view, being caught in controversy or being mired in controversy is a proof that you are a rotten fellow, you're a criminal, so on and so forth. But change the perspective, it becomes something else. And I don't expect many people to understand these things. I would like you to understand these things, because your own personal greatness, fulfillment in your life depends entirely on this, nothing else. Entirely on this. If you don't have this liberating, empowering understanding of your predicament and your destiny, you are done for. The world will chew you up. Unless, of course, you conform so mindlessly to the pattern of the world and live like a pale shadow for the rest of your life, which I believe is a condemnation. It's a tragedy. So that's the very first thing I want to say. The second thing is this. You seek what you love. In other words, seeking is an outworking of love. Very simple proposition, all right? Seeking is an outworking of, an expression of, a practical expression of love. You will seek only that which you love. Okay? Obvious. If you hate something, you will avoid it. If you find something boring, you will avoid it. So, you need to examine yourself. I need to examine myself in terms of what it is that I really love. Because a person is the sum total of his loves. Now, love, of course, is an abstract term. In grammar, abstract nouns have no plurals. So, I'm going to violate grammar a little bit for the sake of clarity. So, our personality, in fact, our destiny or our character is the sum total of our many loves. Okay? All right? Now, but there is a context in which love can be in the plural without violating grammar, and that is if love actually means a person who is loved, then loves is as plural is fine. But as an abstract noun, it cannot have the plural form. So, what is it that you love? You know, when you come into education, what is actually expected or required to happen is a redefinition of your love. Now, at various stages of your growth, you would have noticed your loves changing. When you were a little child, you loved your toys, right? The toys meant so much for you. And you sought your toys, actually. You played with your toys for some time, got tired of it, went to mummy crying, and then mummy fed you. Then, of course, you sought your toys. And if the toys were not to be found, you cried. You brought the roof down. Ask your parents how many times they had to repair the roofs because of you. Okay? So, but past, say, the age of 5, 6, that was not the case. You sought something else. Maybe you sought friends, right? When you went to school, you sought friends. You had good friends. Did you have good friends? Anyone who never had a good friend? Or a friend for that matter? Okay, I'm so glad that you're not, sunk deep in aloneness, which is a very bit of a terrible thing. So you sought something else. And a little later, you sought still something else. This time, perhaps, you began to seek adventure, right? So, you went here, you went there, and you ran some risks, and you derived some thrill, some pleasure, all right? And in order to aggravate, in order to sharpen the edges of your rebellious pleasure, you actually began to disobey your parents. All right? Now, pleasure is a very problematic category. The problem with pleasure is that it comes programmed with disenchantment. I don't know how many of you realize it. You seek pleasure, and the outcome is disenchantment. Every experience of pleasure eventuates into disenchantment. You can't escape it. Therefore, what happens? From one form of pleasure, from one degree of pleasure, you go to the higher degree. And that's the logic of pleasure and pleasure seeking. Right? You sought that. Now, all the while, what was happening to you was that this higher awareness which you had as a baby was getting dimmed. Wordsworth says, heaven, trailing clouds of glory do we come from God who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. That awareness is progressively lost. And how is it lost? It is lost through your seeking. So there is a seeking that is inimical to your growth and empowerment as human beings. For example, one category of people who seek and seek ardently, seek scientifically, seek systematically which is that category which seeks ardently, systematically? You would say scientists, yes, but thieves. Thieves also seek far more adventurously, with greater determination, with greater precision. I have been amazed at the skill of a pickpocket. I mean, it's amazing. You know, in a flash, you are unburdened of all your earthly valuables. In a flash. And which university can train you in this? There's no course that come anywhere near. So the thief is also seeking. What is he seeking? He's not seeking a human being. The tragedy of being a thief is that he, by definition, is disabled in seeking a fellow human being. He can only seek a pocket. He can only seek a material object which is in your possession, right? So in other words, anyone who seeks reductively is in principle a thief. For example, you become a government officer, maybe some high-powered government officer, but if you can't move your file or your finger without somebody greasing your palm, you are a thief. And you became a thief because you did not cultivate the discipline of seeking. Therefore, you are seeking something else. You see, a human being has to seek. There is no alternative to seeking. But you can choose between seeking the lower things of life and the higher destiny of your being as a human person. So you can become either a thief or a person with dignity, right? And education must liberate you from these cheap lower interests and permanently ensure that you don't become a thief. Unfortunately, this is not guaranteed, because education is bypassing or sidestepping its own core responsibility. All right? So there is more to seeking, and we'll discuss it. Tomorrow I have a program with the All India Association for Christian Institutions and Higher Education. So I won't be here, but Mr. Matthew will conduct the. I'll meet you day after.